Picture this: a dense, suffocating woodland where the sunlight barely makes it past the canopy. Towering trees that look like they've stood there for centuries, maybe longer. Their branches droop low, heavy with moss that glistens like it's always wet, even on days when the sun's blazing. The air, still, thick, like the forest itself is holding its breath. That place has a name: Blackwood Glen. Now, if you ask the locals about it, you won't get the same answer twice. Some won't say a word. Others get weirdly quiet, like just mentioning it might summon something. But one thing they all agree on: once you step in, you might never step out. Not really. They say the forest consumes you, not in a fairy tale way, not wolves or witches, something older, deeper. It messes with your head, your memory, your sense of time. You go in thinking it's a hike, a dare, an adventure, and then nothing. Your phone dies. Compass spins. GPS can't find you. Even the trees start looking the same. People have walked straight lines for hours, only to end up right where they started, or worse, nowhere at all. Over the years, stories piled up. Campers disappearing, hikers never coming home, search parties finding backpacks, tents, shoes, but no people. Police reports say unresolved. Locals say lost. Some just call it what they believe: taken. So when whispers started spreading that someone made it out alive, actually made it out, it was like the town held its breath all over again. Her name? Emily Barnes, 17 years old, junior. In high school. Quiet, smart, a little outdoorsy, sure, but nothing extreme. She wasn't a survival expert, no army training, just a normal teenager who loved hiking with her best friend and taking nature pics for her Instagram. Except this time, she went into Blackwood Glen and came out. And not just came out. Came back changed. But here's the catch. Emily didn't remember everything at first. There were gaps, flashes, fragments of something dreamlike or nightmarish. It took days before she even spoke about it. And when she did, what she described didn't sound like anything this world should contain. Her story is wild, creepy, disturbing, but it's also the only thread we've got. The only first-person account of what lies beyond the overgrowth, deep past where the maps end. So if you've ever heard someone say, "Don't go into Blackwood Glen," maybe, just maybe, they weren't talking about bears or getting lost. Maybe they meant something else. Something waiting. Emily grew up right on the edge of Blackwood Glen. Her bedroom window looked out toward the tree line, and some nights, when the moon was high, the trees would shimmer silver like they were dipped in frost. To her, it wasn't scary. It was just home. That forest was like a giant backyard, a wild, magical playground. Endless trails, tree forts, streams for skipping rocks. It was where she learned to ride her bike off trail, where she and her friends carved their initials into bark, where summer felt eternal. They called it the fun forest. They'd play tag there, roast marshmallows, tell dumb ghost stories around campfires they barely knew how to make. No one whispered about people going missing. The older folks? Sure, they muttered things like, "Don't stray too far," but kids never listened. Not really. Not until that summer. That's when the whispers began. Quiet at first, almost like rumors trying not to be heard. A high school senior, Ryan, went missing on a solo trail run. His track ended in the middle of a clearing, no signs of struggle, no wild animal prints. Just vanished. Then it was a local hunter, then 2 college hikers, then a family that stopped to picnic on the ridge and never made it back to their car. 4 people. Vanished. No signs. No clues. The sheriff's department said it was likely environmental causes. Flash floods, animal encounters, poor prep. But locals started seeing the patterns. It wasn't just random. It was always the same zone, same stretch of forest. The Glen, still, no one panicked. The fear didn't feel real, not until Tara. Tara wasn't a stranger. She wasn't a name in a police report. She was Emily's person, her best friend since 3rd grade. They had matching necklaces, shared journals. They even had this tradition of camping together every year right before school started. Just the two of them, no phones, no adults. A break from the world before senior year kicked in. But that August, Tara went in alone. Emily had caught the flu the night before, a really nasty one. Could barely sit up, let alone hike. Tara told her, "No biggie, I'll go test the new trail. Just overnight, I'll be back before brunch." She never came back. Her car was found parked on the shoulder, locked. Her backpack, gone. The rangers followed her boot prints for about 2 miles, and then they just stopped. Like she'd been plucked straight from the earth. No scuffle, no torn clothes, no dropped gear. Just an open trail that ended in silence. The police searched for 3 days. Dogs couldn't get a scent past that point. Helicopters couldn't see anything unusual from above. And by the end of the week, Tara's photo was posted next to the others on the wall of the sheriff's office. But for Emily, it wasn't just another name. It was everything. And that's what jogged her memory. Suddenly, all the things she had brushed off, the odd sensations, the weird stillness, the strange breeze that always moved against her, like the air was subtly pushing her out. It all came rushing back. She remembered camping with Tara the year before, when they'd both felt like something was watching from beyond the tree line. They'd laughed it off at the time, made jokes about Bigfoot or forest ghosts. But deep down, Emily had felt it. A presence, a low vibration, a humming, not mechanical, not animal, just wrong. She remembered how the birds went quiet after sunset, how the shadows seemed to move before the trees did, how sometimes they'd wake up and find small stacks of stones beside their tent that neither of them remembered making. But Tara was fearless, and Emily wanted to be. So she ignored it until the forest took her. That's when Emily stopped brushing it off, because now it was personal. Five days after Tara vanished, Emily had had enough. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her friend's boots disappearing into the trees. She heard Tara's laugh echoing in the back of her head, like a memory clawing to stay alive. And all the official searches felt hollow. They didn't know Tara like she did. They weren't going to find her sitting behind a desk, sipping coffee and marking maps. So that night, around 9 p.m., when the sky turned from orange to ink, Emily made her choice. She grabbed her flashlight, a backup battery, a water bottle, a backpack with protein bars, and a basic first aid kit. She slid her Swiss Army knife into her boot, zipped her hoodie, and stepped outside. No more waiting, no more hoping. She was going in, alone. She reached the tree line just before 10 p.m. The entrance trail was familiar, too familiar. It was the same one Tara had taken, and Emily could trace the steps like muscle memory. The first fork past the hollow stump, the little pile of stacked stones by the stream, the twisted birch tree that looked like it had been struck by lightning 100 years ago. For the first hour, it felt manageable, like a late-night hike. Crickets chirping, owls calling, leaves crunching underfoot. Her flashlight beam swayed with every breath. But then, something shifted. Around midnight, Emily noticed the air had changed. It wasn't just colder, it was thicker, like trying to breathe through damp cloth. The smell was different too. Wet. Earth, yes, but also something sweet, not good sweet. Rotten sweet, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. She stopped walking for a second. There was no breeze, not even the rustle of squirrels or flutter of bats. The sounds had stopped, just her breath, too loud in her ears, and the soft, irregular thump of her heartbeat. The trail, somehow, began to feel unfamiliar. The twists were tighter, the shadows deeper. The flashlight beam seemed to get swallowed by the dark, like the night was actively resisting light, and that's when she saw them, her own footprints. She froze. The dirt path in front of her, illuminated by flashlight, clearly showed her hiking boots, the tread marks, the spot where she'd stepped a bit harder and scuffed the earth. The same. Ones she remembered from maybe 20 minutes earlier. She was walking in circles. But the path behind her, gone. Just gone. She turned, swung her flashlight, and where there had once been a clear trail, now there were only gnarled trees, thick underbrush, and a suffocating wall of green-black shadow. No footprints, no exit. Like the forest had rearranged itself. The second she looked away, her throat tightened. She tried backtracking, pushing through brambles, but the trees felt closer now, taller, angrier. The flashlight began to flicker. The silence pressed against her ears like a scream she couldn't hear. And then, something moved. She didn't see it, not fully, just a blur at the edge of her vision. Something low, crawling, watching. That's when she whispered to herself, barely audible, "This place isn't normal." And it wasn't. That's when the forest did its thing. Emily said it didn't happen all at once. It crept in, like fog under a door. At first it was a whisper, not a voice she recognized, not calling her name or giving direction, just murmuring, like wind, through reeds or someone whispering 2 rooms away. She stopped, turned off her flashlight to listen. Nothing, just the sound of her own heartbeat thudding in her throat. Then it came again, clearer this time, still impossible to understand. Male, female, old, young, she couldn't tell. But it wasn't one voice. It was several, layered, staggered, whispering over each other like a broken choir. She started following it, not out of stupidity, she said, but because part of her believed, deeply, that someone else was in there. Someone like Tara. Someone who'd gotten stuck or injured or maybe just as scared. It felt urgent. The whispers pulled her deeper. And then, snap. She stopped, just in time. Her foot hovered above a hole, an actual pit trap. Shallow, but lined with broken branches, the kind that would tear skin or snap bone if you landed wrong. It had been camouflaged with dead leaves, pine needles, and just enough dirt to look natural. She staggered back. That's when her survival brain kicked in. This isn't random, she whispered to herself. She wasn't just lost. She wasn't just being watched. She was being guided. The realization hit her like a punch to the chest. Whatever was in this forest, it wasn't trying to help her. It was playing with her. And that's when the humming started. Not musical. Not rhythmic. Just a low, droning hum that you didn't hear so much as feel. It vibrated through her ribs like standing near a giant electric transformer. Her teeth itched, her ears popped. The air felt like it was pressing against her, shoving. From all sides, dense and angry. She turned toward the source. There, between a cluster of thick, ancient trees, the sound intensified. The trees themselves looked wrong. Their trunks were thick but crooked, bending unnaturally as if trying to avoid being touched, and the roots, twisted, tangled. Some of them looked like faces, not clearly, but just enough, indentations, that looked like screaming mouths or empty sockets. That was enough. Emily bolted. No more being careful. No more following sounds. She didn't even care if she got more lost. She just ran. She ducked under branches, jumped fallen logs, clawed through vines. Her breath came in sharp, dry gasps. She didn't stop to check behind her. Didn't want to, because in her bones, she knew if she turned around, she might see something, and seeing it would mean never leaving. She burst through the trees, branches clawing at her arms like desperate fingers, and then, suddenly, open space, a clearing. In the center of it stood a cabin, if you could even call it that. The wood was gray with age, warped and splintered, from years of rain and rot. Part of the roof had collapsed inward, and moss coated the walls like some kind of infection. The windows were smeared with dirt and fogged over, as if the place itself had been exhaling. She hesitated, just for a second, because inside, there was light. Not warm light, not a flashlight or a phone screen, but an unnatural, flickering orange glow, like flame, firelight, and shadows. Moving. Shadows, big ones. One in particular, tall and stretched, barely swaying. Too tall, too thin, and perfectly still. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She dropped low, ducking behind what was left of the doorframe, heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. She peeked, careful not to make a sound. The figure hadn't moved, not an inch. But it was there, human-shaped but distorted. The proportions didn't make sense. The arms were too long, and the neck, slightly crooked, as if it had been broken and badly reset. It stood near the center of the cabin, illuminated by the pulsing, broken lantern flame that sat on the floor. Its glow threw chaotic shadows across the room, which danced up the walls like panicked spirits. Then she saw the runes, dozens of them, burned, scratched, or drawn in thick charcoal all over the inside walls. Spirals, arrows, eyes with too many lashes, triangles inside circles, and jagged teeth shapes in rows. Some of them glowed, faintly, reacting to the light, or maybe to something else. She stared too long, because one of them, just one, seemed to shift. Just slightly. Its spiral turned inward, deeper. Almost like it had no end. Her body reacted before her brain could. She backed away fast, breath shallow and shaking, knees jelly. Then she turned and sprinted. Didn't care what she crashed into. What cuts she got, didn't care about direction anymore. There was a window at the back, cracked, half-shattered. She hurled herself through it, glass slicing her arm, but she didn't even feel it. All she knew was she needed to get away. From the runes, from the figure, from the eyes she felt, even if she never saw them. The forest didn't make noise, but in that moment, it felt like it was listening. Outside, the forest seemed to breathe. Emily could feel it, like every tree had lungs, exhaling damp air onto her skin. The canopy above shifted not with wind, but with intention. Branches leaned inward, curling like fingers. The undergrowth swelled and closed behind her as if trying to trap her back in. Somewhere behind her a hen dove flapped wildly through the air, wings slapping the stillness. It crashed into a branch and vanished into the dark. She didn't stop. Her legs moved, on pure adrenaline, crashing through brush and roots and low-hanging vines that clawed at her like something alive. Her ears rang. Her heartbeat drowned out the forest sounds, or maybe the forest had gone silent again. She didn't know. Then, out of nowhere, a clearing. A sudden break in the suffocating trees. She stumbled out, gasping, and came face with a pond. It looked almost artificial, round still, perfectly clear, no ripples. The moonlight hit it just right, casting a glow like glass, and in it, her reflection. But it wasn't right. She froze. Her face looked back, but the eyes were wrong, too dark, too big. And the expression? Not terror, not confusion, but a smile. A slow, spreading grin that didn't belong to her. Then the reflection shifted, stretched outward like her form was warping. The face bulged, features twisting like clay under pressure. The grin widened, impossibly, before it snapped back to normal. Emily gasped and stumbled backward, slipped on mud, then caught herself. That was it. She couldn't think anymore, couldn't process. She just ran. She bolted along the edge of the pond, skidding through weeds, ignoring the branches whipping her arms and face. Her breath came out in broken sobs. Every time her foot hit the ground, it felt like the earth was trying to hold her. And then, light. Real light. Headlights. She broke through the tree line like an animal, practically falling into a gravel turnout where a camper van sat humming. A couple, mid-30s, had been setting up a campfire and saw her come sprinting out of the forest like she was on fire. They dropped everything. Emily collapsed just a few feet away from them, soaked to the bone, her hoodie torn, skin streaked with cuts and dirt. She was shaking so violently it looked like a seizure. Her lips moved, but all that came out were panicked gasps and one word repeated over and over. Alive. It's alive. It's alive. The couple didn't wait. The woman wrapped her jacket around Emily and dialed 911 while her partner tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop pointing. Back at the forest, at the wall of trees that, under the headlights, didn't look like plants anymore, but like sentinels watching, waiting, breathing. Paramedics confirmed she'd only been gone around 3 hours. 3 hours. But Emily swore she had lived in that forest for at least 2 days. She remembered details too vividly. How her throat dried out, how the night changed temperature. Multiple times, how her flashlight died and she navigated by moonlight. She even had bruises and deep scratches that looked far older than a few hours could explain. She kept saying, "It bent time. It didn't want me to know how long I was there." At the hospital, she was lucid, awake. Her vitals were normal aside from mild dehydration and low body temperature. No signs of head trauma, no traces of psychoactive plants, no hallucinogens in her blood work. They tested everything they could think of: spores, mold, even rare neurotoxins. All clean, but still, she trembled at the sound of leaves rustling. Outside her room window, she told investigators about the voices, how they didn't say anything intelligible but led her like whispers on a thread. She described the symbols she saw on the cabin walls, spirals within triangles, and these arrow-like things that seemed to point in all directions at once. She remembered the figure by the firelight, its 2 long limbs, its unmoving shadow. She described the reflection that didn't match hers. None of it made sense. Authorities nodded, took notes, smiled like they understood. But behind closed doors, they labeled it a stress-induced delusion. A trauma response. Then came the search and rescue. Over a dozen trained people combed the woods. They mapped the area using GPS drones, scanned with dogs, infrared, everything. They searched for the cabin, the strange clearing, even the exact shape of the pond she'd described. They found nothing. No pit trap, no ruins, no charcoal symbols on trees, not even a broken window or scrap of wood that resembled a cabin. Except, they did find footprints. Emily's, confirmed by shoe size and tread. They were erratic, weaving in tight circles, crossing themselves, even overlapping in ways that suggested she'd walked in literal loops. And right in the center of what might have been the clearing, one tiny blackened lantern ember. Still, faintly warm. No oil, no origin, but no Tara, no other prints, not a single clue she had ever entered that forest. It was like Blackwood Glen had reached out, sampled. Emily then decided to spit her back out, and it consumed everything else. We talked to historians and folklore experts. Turns out, Blackwood Glen has been a strange place for centuries. Long before paved roads and suburbs, the area was home to an indigenous tribe known for their deep spiritual connection with nature, particularly the forest. They believed that the woods weren't just alive, but aware. It wasn't just trees and soil. It was a spirit, ancient and watchful. And they respected it, or feared it. Maybe both. The tribe practiced rituals, seasonal offerings, and most chillingly, rites of binding. According to a local ethnographer, one recovered manuscript spoke of a practice where individuals, voluntarily or not, were left in the forest to merge with the glen. No bodies were ever found, just ceremonial carvings on trees and stones, and oral traditions passed down in fragments. That's where it gets even weirder. The runes Emily described inside. The cabin, spirals within triangles and arrows pointing in every direction. Those weren't just random scratches. A folklore archivist matched her sketches to a collection of symbols housed in the regional museum. Same shapes, same arrangements, same eerie meaning. They were old, pre-colonial, etched into stones found deep in forested areas no longer accessible by modern trails. And the symbols weren't harmless. They weren't art. They meant things like passage, binding, offering. Some were meant to trap something, others to guide someone in. One rune Emily swore she saw near the cabin doorway. It was labeled Cycle Unbroken in the museum catalog. No one really knew what that meant. But scholars agreed. You don't use these symbols randomly. They were part of a belief system that saw the forest not as a place you visit, but as a gate. A living entity that decided who could come and go, and sometimes it closed the door. The deeper we dug, the more we realized. Blackwood Glen has a pattern. Missing hikers, locals who avoid the center trails, rumors of watchers in the trees, and every decade or so, someone vanishes, sometimes two, but never does someone come back, until Emily. We also spoke with urban myth psychologist Dr. Kira Novak, who's spent over a decade studying the intersection between folklore, brain chemistry, and how the human mind reacts in high-stress natural environments. She told us something fascinating and, honestly, kind of terrifying. When people enter deep forests in elevated stress, she said, especially alone, their perception can begin to bend. The brain starts to filter sensory data differently. Shadows feel like figures. Wind becomes whispering. Time stretches or collapses. Basically, your brain starts glitching. Whispers might be real voices, or they might be cognitive projections. Your mind trying to create patterns out of chaos. That reflection Emily saw? It could have been her, or it could have been her brain responding to a threat by morphing identity perception. Some people, in extreme survival mode, even hallucinate seeing themselves aged, or not themselves at all. But here's what caught our attention. Dr. Novak didn't dismiss Emily's experience. Not at all. She underwent a full medical panel, she explained. Cortisol levels were through the roof, meaning extreme stress. Her heart rate, recorded by her fitness tracker, spiked erratically only during those specific 3 hours. And most notably, there were no drugs, no toxins, no trauma to the head or body to cause hallucination. She leaned back and said, "So what do you do with that kind of data?" It wasn't just mental, it was physical, documented, real. Doctor. Novak did offer some alternative possibilities, though, ones that open more questions than answers. Infrasound, she said. Low-frequency sound waves, often produced by wind passing through narrow valleys or rock formations. You can't hear it consciously, but it can cause nausea, disorientation, even panic. Combine that with magnetic anomalies, natural shifts in Earth's magnetic field caused by iron deposits underground, and suddenly, you've got a cocktail of sensory interference. She explained that certain forests, especially ones like Blackwood Glen that sit on mineral-rich land, can mess with our internal compasses, both literal and neurological. Think animal instincts thrown out of whack, internal balance gone. Add to that the thick canopy blocking sun position, and people can end up walking in circles, even if they swear they're going straight. But even that doesn't fully explain Emily's story. She saw runes that matched ancient carvings, heard whispers that led her to a hidden cabin, encountered a reflection that changed before her eyes. Dr. Novak paused and said, "That's where science stops. We have working theories. But what Emily experienced? That falls in the blurry space between psychology and the unknown. And sometimes, folklore survives for a reason." She smiled, but not in a way that made us feel comforted. It made us feel like Blackwood Glen might be more than just a creepy forest. It might be a living question mark. And Emily just happened to make it out with enough sense left to ask the right ones. Emily's considered quitting hiking altogether. For a while, she couldn't even look at trees without her chest tightening. The sound of leaves rustling outside her window at night would make her wake up in a cold sweat. Even opening a tent in her backyard, something she used to do for fun as a kid, suddenly felt claustrophobic. Like she might unzip it and see those runes burned into the air. But instead of running from it, she decided to take back control. Now, she still hikes, but she does it differently. Always in groups, never alone. She brings multiple GPS devices, leaves trail markers every few hundred meters, and checks in with someone by phone every hour. Her backpack now looks more like a survivalist kit: emergency beacon, whistle, flares, extra batteries, even charcoal in case she ever has to leave a message again. "I don't want people to stop hiking," she said during a local seminar we attended. "I want them to respect where they're going." Emily's become something of a local figure, invited to speak at schools, outdoor rec groups, even wilderness rescue training camps. She tells her story not to scare people, but to show them what can happen when we assume nature is always on our side, because it's not. She emphasizes mental prep as much as physical, knowing your limits, recognizing fear triggers, and staying grounded even when your instincts are screaming. And yeah, there are moments when she freezes up. If the forest gets too quiet, if the wind stops, if she hears a hum, she checks her surroundings like a soldier on recon, because the truth is, she never really left Blackwood Glen. Not mentally. Some nights when she's trying to sleep, she still hears the whispers. Not loud, not threatening, but present. Like the forest left something in her, a piece of itself. She dreams of that. Cabin sometimes too. Same broken lantern, same runes on the walls. But sometimes the figure is gone. Other times, it's right behind her. The worst is the reflection, because in her dreams, it still doesn't look like her, and sometimes, it smiles. If you're ever drawn to forest mysteries, respect the unknown. There's something romantic about chasing legends, following a faded trail, or stepping off the beaten path just to see what's on the other side. But the truth? Nature doesn't always want to be found. Don't go alone. It's not about being afraid. It's about not underestimating something ancient, something wild. The forest doesn't need to roar to be dangerous. Sometimes the scariest places are the ones that greet you with silence. Always share your plans. Tell someone where you're going and when you're supposed to be back. Drop a pin, write a note, anything. Because when the forest decides it wants to keep you, it doesn't leave a trail. Bring backup lights, multiple. Flashlights with fresh batteries, headlamps, emergency glow sticks, whatever you've got. Darkness moves differently out there. It swallows things. Your vision, your thoughts, even your sense of time. Trackers, whistles, a physical map. Because phones die, signals vanish, and paths rearrange themselves when you're scared and running. And if you ever hear something, whispers, humming, footsteps in the wrong direction, don't follow it. Don't be curious. Don't investigate. Don't assume you're imagining things. Sometimes, the oldest tricks are the ones that work the best. Lure you in. Make you believe you're in control. That it's just a strange sound. That you can handle it because some places aren't empty. They're watching. They're old. Older than cities. Older than borders. Built before language, before logic. They don't need to chase you. They wait. And they remember every person who's walked too deep with the wrong kind of curiosity, and occasionally, once in a while, they let someone come back, but not for mercy, not for kindness. They let someone come back, so the story lives, so the fear spreads. So next time, when someone hears the whispers, They won't hesitate. They'll listen. They'll follow. And the forest will feed again. Thanks for sticking with Emily's terrifying journey. If you felt chills or know someone with a spooky outdoor experience, smash that like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We drop new real paranormal explorations and survival tales every week. You won't want to miss our next deep dive into creepy wilderness mysteries.